What's up, YouTube? It's a Convict's Perspective with your big homie Rojo.
Your boy Flacco.
Please make sure y'all hit that like and subscribe. Help us out so we can keep bringing you that great content.
So today we're going to be discussing a whole different topic. We're going to be discussing about the past relationship as far as between the NF and the AB and the conflict of becoming enemies and how that has transcended between our normal Norteño inmates as well as white inmates. So we're going to start with a little bit of history in the beginning. The Aryan Brotherhood originally started around 1967, I believe, in San Quentin. Its whole purpose, right, was to establish and provide protection for white inmates against other Hispanics and black inmates. Some of the first terms, like as we've all heard, was they were originally called bluebirds. Other names used in the past were Diamond Tooth Gang and Nazi Gang. So through over time, right, the AB originally, right, most of its members at that time were basically of Irish descent. So in the beginning, the AB used to use terms, right? They still use these terms to this day. They would use the term brand. They would have tattoos like shamrocks, 666, even a rope around their necks. Those were common identifications of what you would call a brand member. Now, originally, the AB started to organize themselves to protect themselves from other races, and their whole agenda and purpose in the beginning was to promote white superiority, right? Racial hatred on these lines, you know, and that was a common thing in the beginning is they didn't commonly get along with the inmates or Sureños at first. Over time, though, as these alliances started to create, the MA basically had a member named Joe Pegleg Morgan, right? So he formed an alliance with the AB. In order for this to occur and seal the pact, the MA had the AB kill an NF member by the name Fred Charles Castillo in Palm Hall. They were killed by Aryan Brotherhood members Fred Madrin and Donald C. Hell. This murder reportedly sealed a pact between the Aryan Brother and the Mexican Mafia.
So one of the things with the AB is like prior to their inception, there used to be segregation. So, you know, the black inmates would be separated from, you know, the rest of the population. So one of their main, you know, initial purposes in becoming a group was to, you know, continue to try to keep African American people, you know, away from them. You know, like when they ended all the segregation by race in the prison system, you know, obviously a lot of the white inmates weren't going to be too happy with that, and their response was to form that gang, you know, and that was one of the driving forces in their reason for doing that.
Yeah, as soon as all these killings started to occur at that time, NF have killed several AB members. And I think our biggest issue, right, with the AB at that time was how they aligned in an alliance and stuck their nose into business between the war between the Mexican Mafia and the NF. That was our biggest issue that we ever had with them. Therefore, we declared war with them, declared them the enemy. And this occurred all throughout the 70s, you know. And understand the AB, they're treacherous. They are very treacherous individuals. The real Aryan Brotherhood members, they are some treacherous individuals.
They're not playing.
You know, but through time, right, this started to transcend as we go into the 70s and 80s. By the time the 80s came about, we had already had a little bit of a loose alliance with the BGF like we discussed. And the BGF at that time were very, very militant, right? We both functioned under regimental structure type of, you know, we used to do machine together, we used to communicate together, even go to battle at times, right? And the original alliance that we had with the BGF was they were supposed to take care of all the AB, the NF will take care of all the MA. Things started to change and we started to get locked down and slammed down, and this kind of crippled a lot of these organizations. If you notice, like around the 80s, you don't hear a lot about the prison gangs out there in the streets, the MA and the NF, as far as things that were occurring, because there was a lot of indictments, a lot of dudes were flipping, and all these organizations were basically regrouping the structure themselves. So, but the geographical boundaries that started to occur for the Norteños and Sureños, right, blacks and whites, was on one side of the yard you'd have Norteños and blacks, right? We would share all the phones, showers, tables. We'd have our areas established, you know, in any facility where we're on the same side of the yard.
Yeah, weight pile, all that.
And the same thing would be said of the whites and the Sureños. So this is kind of how my interpretation, as far as when I first started to hear the system, hit the system, right? Whereas the blacks were more organized and structured in the 80s and 90s, the whites used to have a more loose program in the 80s and 90s. A lot of them had long hair and, would be dope fiends out there on the yard and, I love you, brother. Go check out my lady, brother. And, they used to joke around like that, sex play, and their conduct was really never taken serious. And basically, a lot of them were doing a lot of the bidding for the Sureños. A lot of the real whites that were out there in the yard that were about the business, a lot of them ended up going to the main lines. Back to the shoe, excuse me. So it was a little bit different. So when we were going to these main lines in the 80s and 90s, us as Norteños, me personally, we never really took the whites as serious of a threat, right? But you started to have little pop-up little groups that started to come about, right? You started having NLR started coming on the yards, and we had an implementation that came from the Bay that no NLR was to walk our main lines.
They're with the business too.
So whenever an NLR or someone that came to these main lines and touched down, we used to consider them a threat, just like if they were a Mexican Mafia member or an Aryan Brotherhood. So in order for us to have any type of longevity on any type of main line and for it to be a firm establishment, we would remove any threat on any yard that we had established. So if a Sureño came and there ended up being someone that we suspected was an MA member or an MA associate, or there used to be a term that we used to talk about called SSG, Southside Government. I don't know how factual that term is because I haven't heard any Sureños discuss it. But if we had any suspicion of anybody hitting a yard that was any type of potential threat, we were removing them. We wanted to have the old white dudes that were all tatted back that were dope fiends out there in the yard. Because a lot of them we were selling dope to at the time and making money.
Yeah, it tripped me out, man. When I was in Susanville, when I first hit the 3 yard, I had been on the 1 yards and 2 yards on my first term because I didn't have many points. But when I finally hit the 3 yard, and I found that some of them white dudes were still out there laying in the sun, and just their shorts and stuff, man. I didn't take them serious either.
Yeah, but so that's how it was at that time. I've been around numerous individuals like NLRs in the 80s and 90s, and they were with the business, and it was funk on sight, man. I got off with a couple of those cats before, but I started to see changes started to happen around the 90s and 2000, and this is due to the Aryan Brotherhood. Whereas the African brothers, their program started to take a step back. You're no longer seeing the militancy or the discipline or the unity that we used to see in the yard together back in the late 80s and 90s. We used to be having more close knit, and the whites had a looser program. Next thing you know, all these woods that had long hair, right, that were out there on these yards, just they all have shaved heads and they're claiming skinheads. You started having little sub-factions like Wolfpack skinheads, P9, Warrior skinheads. They all started to sprout up, and they started to basically what the AB did was the smartest thing that they could do. They started to recruit individuals from these little sub-factions into the Aryan Brotherhood. Therefore, these members, whether it be Wolfpack or P9, would basically be doing the AB's bidding. And so that's been the whole issue between us Norteños and Sureños on the main line, right? We've always been able to coexist at times, and the same thing with whites. But when anybody would come pushing any type of political agenda for the AB, it was on site. And one of the main issues that we've always had, because there's a difference, and Rojo can understand this, and a lot of you viewers out there will understand this too that are from Northern California. The whites from Northern California, they have a whole different attitude than the whites from down south. Sometimes the whites from down south, it seemed like to me like they hated us more than they even hated the blacks. Whereas a lot of these whites, I used to talk to a lot of them sometimes, man. They used to sit there and say, man, I have nothing against you, man. This is just, it's politics. They'd hit our county jail, and, we'd be cool, respectful, look after them. And they would say, oh yeah, I mess with the homies out there on the streets and all this stuff, right? Next thing you know, you see them on the main line, man, they're pushing a straight skinhead agenda or straight wood agenda, right? And are anti-homies. And it's based upon geographical politics as far as how the system has been developed. And so us, right, the NF has always said, right, as long as any whites follow under the AB umbrella, we could never ever have any type of relationship to where we can coexist and try to have a working relationship with them.
Yeah, I've actually got in pretty good with a couple old AB members, one being David Cole from Pittsburgh. And when I lived in California still, and I was in the county jail in Contra Costa, I ran across him, and we developed like a little relationship, actually, man. Neither one of us were really supposed to talk to each other, and we both know who each other were, and we talked to each other, and it wasn't on site or nothing. I didn't want take those kind of politics from prison into the county jail when the dude was no threat, you know. He actually got at some white dudes and told them that it'd be in their best interest just to not mess with me, you know what I mean? Because it could kick off something system-wide. Because the Contra Costa County white boys, I mean, like Flacco was saying, there's a bunch that, you know, that mess with us real tough on the streets, and, you know, we're always kicking it, you know, doing whatever together, but, you know, then they go to the county jail and their older heads start getting at them, and, you know, they slowly start, man, poisoning them, actually, that, you know, that we're just no good, you know. And I've seen a lot of white, you know, associates of the Northerners on the streets come in, and then all of a sudden they're racist, listening to country music, and on the streets they're rolling around on rims with beat and, you know, bumping the most gangster rap you ever heard, you know, and they just changed their whole style, you know. So I've always viewed them personally as more of a threat than the Southsiders, because, you know, they automatically don't like me because of my complexion. You know, they consider me a race trading end lover and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And, you know, I don't care what you think. You know what I mean? If you got an issue with me, you can see me at any given time. But I've always kept my eye on them dudes a little bit more so, man. But I'm not gonna say that they're necessarily bad people. It's like Flacco was saying, man, it's politics, it's business, you know. But I've always watched them a little bit closer than I have even the Southsiders or the MA, for sure.
Yeah, in the beginning, like I said, when we first were hitting the system, really didn't take them that serious, me personally. You know what I'm saying? A lot of places like San Quentin, there was a war with the Coca County Woods, and they were getting chopped up, man.
Yeah.
I think they were begging you guys to stop.
Yes, sir. Yep.
You know, well, how did that incident happen with the Woods over there?
Well, there's a couple of them. The main one that I was involved, there was a white homeboy, a white norteño, that was in either West Block or South Block. I'm not 100% positive, but he was in reception any way you look at it. But he was over there. He was on the yard. He wasn't around the homeboys. He was around some black dudes, and one of the white boys happened to see him smoking cigarettes with the black dudes, which, you know, as a white person in prison, that's unforgivable. You know, you can't eat with them, you can't smoke them. I mean, you can't even really talk to them unless they ask you a direct question, you know, that's on a professional level. There's not no, you know, random, hey, how you doing? There's not none of that, especially the higher level ups you get, man. You just kind of ignore each other like you're not there. But anyway, the white boys don't do their homework, and they decide they just got a bad, you know, little piece of wood in their wood pile, and they smash the homeboy. Well, we got word of that back in the hole, and you know, it was determined that there was going to be 14 white boys that were to be hit with a piece because of that decision that they made. And you know, they started coming into East Block, you know, butchered up a little bit, and the white boy that was holding the keys, man, I can't remember his name at this time, man. He kind of got at our people and was like, hey, you know, what can we do to stop this? Because, I mean, we ran San Quentin firmly, you know what I mean? There was, yeah, I mean, the white boys, they're not no punks or nothing like that, but, you know, when it comes down to it, in each institution, one of the groups is going to be the dominant group, and 90% of the time, it's either going to be us or the Sureños, you know. So, you know, while the white boys, yeah, they got their soldiers and whatnot, and, you know, they'll do their work, they couldn't have won that war. You know, we would have kicked it off in H Unit, North Block, the ranch. Like, we would have just kept coming. That's our prison. So eventually, I think it's one of the homeboys we talk about in here a lot that went ahead and said, hey, you know, we're going to go ahead and stop. But yeah, they pushed their boundaries, man, and they end up, you know, getting messed over for not doing their homework is basically what that boiled down to.
Yeah, you know, my personal opinion that I used to notice, right? Like, I noticed all the whites would have a different agenda towards the Northerners, especially when we were low, like 15 and 20, and there was a bunch of Sureños. We would be the first ones that they would want to attack, right? Yeah. They would look for a reason to try to get off on us, you know what I mean? Because we'd be in another facility where there's a bunch of them. They'd be disrespectful, especially when we were in the hole. And I could never understand it. You know, they used to bite into all the conflict between the North and the South. And like, I've been in the hole down South and a couple of NLR casts, and they would be disrespectful, you know what I mean? Straight towards me, straight on the tier. Couldn't get to me, you know what I'm saying? Because it would have been kicking off. In fact, we ended up catching the case in there because I had an implementation because they kept on disrespecting us. This is when I was in the hole in San Luis Obispo, and I had the hole. There's a bunch of us homeboys that were back there in the hole, and the whites were being disrespectful. So I said, if you get a chance at any white dude, take flight on him, right? One of the homeboys, Scooby from San Fran, right, was in there, and he was down there in the hole with us. So he was coming out of ICC, and he had his handcuffs on, right? So did the other white boy. He headbutted this dude and straight broke his damn jaw. You know what I'm saying? The whites tried to get at us. Well, you know what? You guys are disrespecting us in the tier. If we get a chance at you, we're going to handle our business, because there's no door popping in this facility. As far as in the hole, the guards would have to come with a key and unlock your door. So it's not like the doors are going to pop and we can get out there and handle our business. But at the same time, we're being attacked constantly and disrespected. And even the Sudanos used to start, they were disrespecting us at that time. You know what I mean? Like, we would be busting down our machine. They would start trying to do our rutina at the same time we were busting our machine, right? So my experience, man, with them is see, there's been situations to where an NLR has hit a yard. And see, this is what a lot of whites don't understand. When back then, they were the ones that were imposing their politics and their will upon our people, and were one of our main enemies. Therefore, we would end up removing them. And what would end up happening, we'd remove these individuals. We removed this cat one time, Sparky. He was an NLR cat. He had a tattooed on him in San Quentin. We stabbed him up because that's what our bylaws tell us to. That's what the implementation came from the Bay. And what ends up happening from there, all the whites are going to jump. So it's not that we're trying to create a conflict at war with the whites when we do these situations. It's because we're removing a target that we consider a threat to our people, and that's how we're going to operate. Same thing could be said of an individual named Anthony from Coco County. I was in Quentin around 2003, and they hadn't got my C file. So like Rojo mentioned before, he told me that before he snuck out there before. So I snuck out there, and as soon as I got there, Sparky from Salinas was there. Smokey from Sanjo, a couple bros were there, and they all knew me pretty well, and they knew my educational attainments and my experience. And so I was one of the more seasoned NR members that was stepping into that facility, and they told me the situation that this dude had to be removed. So I already knew what was going to happen once we tried to remove him. I go, they're going to jump. So I said, okay, let's hit this dude with a piece, have 3 other soldados strapped up with a piece, or with pieces ready to drop if we have to get off, if they're going to make any moves. We're going to know after we get off on this dude, you know what I mean? And they ended up removing this individual, right? So my experience as far as with the whites has always been, sometimes it's not that we have anything against anyone in general, but when we have to handle our business and remove a target, especially a lot of the whites that were from down south, man, they had a lot of hatred towards the north, man. I mean, you could just see it in their eyes. They had more hatred towards us than even than the blacks. Which, you know, and I used to trip out, me personally, as far as the relationships that the Sudanos used to have with them back in the days. Because here you have a pure white supremacist group with swastikas who aren't supposed to really like blacks, Mexicans, Asians, or anything. And here you have the Sudanos that are aligning in alliance with them. So I think that was one of our biggest issues that we had, because back in the days we were a little bit more revolutionary in our ideals. We used to use terms like to the left, not to the right. We were against the system. We were fighting the system. Any way we can get over on the system, that was our whole agenda. That was the objective of the people, because the system and the whites in general used to try to keep the Norteños down. I mean, I think we had it worse than any other group as far as in any prison facility, because we used to get sent down to facilities where there would be like 20, 30 heads on the yard, 100, 200 Sudanos, and it may be 100, 150 white boys, and maybe 80, 100 blacks, you know, and then you never knew what type of relationship we were going to have with them. Sometimes they'd be riding with us, sometimes they wouldn't even care, left us to our own devices. So as things transcended, like I said, right, we started to have different incidents and issues with these different groups. You know, I could speak of a couple, man, that I personally had. I had more issues and incidents with whites than I ever had with Sureños. I only got off one time with a Sureño, and that's when I was down south, and you know, they were threatening to kill me and talking smack to me. So I hit the yard. I was there for 6 hours. I got off. But when I first hit the county jail at 18 years old, I was in there for a drive-by shooting, and everybody remembers the jails were a little bit more relaxed back then. You know, people were getting high. They were staying up all night. There was no discipline. There was no, I mean, this is in San Jose, Santa Clara County Jail.
Getting up at lunchtime.
There was no HHPs. You know, you were just a homie. If there was issues, we ran that jail. You know, I mean, if we wanted to sleep all day, we slept all day, and that's how the homies used to function. They said it's going to be different when you get to the pen, right? So they put me in this one little section in the county jail, And there was this heavy set white dude, right? And he was facing 3 strikes, and it was really weird because they would pull him out all the times, and he was making certain moves, and it was just real fishy, man. So one day, man, I'm young in my career, and I don't know nothing, right? This is how I ended up being moved to the 6th floor with Chuco and Little Bray from Gilas and all these other B's and C's. So I'm there watching X-Men, right? This white dude comes over to the thing, right? He's big. I'm like about 6'2", like 140, straight flacco. I'm a skinny little kid, man. And he turns off, he changes it to NASCAR racing. Now, bear in mind, I didn't know that sports oversees anything on TV, right? I thought this dude was trying to punk me. I'm the only one up. All the homeboys are sleeping. So I went back to my bed. I cracked my razor, right? I come from behind this dude, and I slice this dude from ear to ear. And then for good measure, I slice him in the arm. And I kick him, and I call him a B word, and I talk all this smack, man. And the homies jumped up, and they were tripping, like, "Get your shit, what happened? What happened?" I'm like, "Well, I just hit this dude." They're like, "What the hell? Why didn't you tell us, man? You breached our security." Like, I didn't even know I was supposed to do any of that, man.
Yeah.
So that was my first incident. I ended up getting rolled up, and they tried to threaten to charge me with attempted murder, and they tried to come and ask me to admit it. This dude was telling on me, right, but did not want to be on paperwork, right? So I'm already facing a case for shooting into a dwelling, and now they're threatening to charge me with attempted murder. Luckily for me, they never charged me with it. What ended up happening, though, this is a true story. I ended up going to San Quentin, right? I get transferred, I go to the hole, I get off, you know what I mean? I'm striving, I'm a young soldado. I get sent to Solano, right? And I have level 3 points. But then somehow they override it, and they move me from the level 3 building, they move me to the level 2 yard. So I'm walking the yard with an individual named Bam Bam from Livermore. And so I was always taught, my schooling, I was always getting schooled, if you see a problem, you have to assess it. You don't just leave it unattended. So I'm walking into the yard, right? Guess who I see on the yard?
That white dude.
I see that white dude. I stop, and he's with 3 other fucking white dudes. 3 other white dudes, and I step up to him like, "Hey, what's cracking, man? I heard, man, you told on me. Whoa, whoa, I'm about to get off on him." And he gets all scary and all this stuff, and they start to intervene. And homeboy pulls me aside like, "What happened?" He goes, "Man, why didn't you tell me you were going to do that?" I go, "Well, I was always told if there's an issue, address it." Told the homies, reported what happened. They told me, "Well, we'll deal with this." The dude tries to come up to me and actually be cool. I'm saying, it's talking about he can get me into the canteen if I give him a ducat, that he understands all this stuff. He was basically some weenie ass cat. And what ends up happening is about 2 days later, you got to remember, I got moved from a level 3 to a level 2. They moved me back from the level 2 yard to the level 3.
Oh, of course.
So this dude straight told on me. All right.
Yeah, I remember, man. See, I went to the county jail in Texas, man, because you go when you're a little younger down there. It's under 18 out here. You got to be 18 to go to the county unless you're fighting an adult trial, as a juvenile. But when I went to Contra Costa, man, there was like 2 homeboys, period, at any given time, and the Cocoa County white boys back in the early 90s, they were thick and they were with the business. You know what I mean? And bro, they hated me from the gate, you know what I mean? Just because of my relationships. Obviously, I'm a homeboy, and then, I happen to know a lot of the black dudes in there, and I didn't have no problem talking to people I know. I'm not gonna have anybody dictate any, don't be talking to him. I know you're not one of us, brother, but you still shouldn't talk to them guys. Yeah, whatever. I'm a grown man, So, man, more times than I can count, they tried to send torpedoes at me to get me off the module, man, because in my county jail, we used to have, if we were good, no write-ups or nothing for 30 days, we were allowed to get a contact visit with our people, and, this was in the early 90s up until probably like 94, 95. But I used to hit, you know what I mean? So, once the white boys found out I was hitting and I wasn't kicking them down and stuff, bro, they'd be trying to send torpedoes at me to get me off the module because I wasn't sharing and all kinds of stuff, man. But, like I said earlier, man, I've had way more problems with them than the Southsiders, and what a lot of people don't understand is, people think Woods are just like this one big group. Man, the Woods structure is AB's at the top. And then anybody who associates with AB that's got their blessing under them, such as like them guys from Fame or NLR or whoever, you know, they're going to be right there with almost that same status on them yards. A lot of white boys don't follow that stuff, but at the same time, if you attack a white boy, even the Woods are going to be obligated to jump in. So the Woods aren't simply just, hey, that's the white group, man. There's all kinds of subgroups. There might be 5 or 6 different kinds of skinheads and peneyes and white Aryan resistances and, you know, sacramaniacs, Yolo County knuckleheads. There might be 7, 8 different kind of groups within the whites where, okay, as NF members or Norteños, we don't have a problem with anybody based on their race. That's race doesn't play anything into our politics whatsoever. But you know, if we don't have problems with the Woods per se, we have problems with the AB, and with that comes those that function under them, though, because they're pushing that agenda. So we look at them as the same kind of threat group. But what a lot of viewers don't understand, though, and I'm trying to make clear, is that, man, the whites have a lot of little different divisions. And, you know, just regular Woods, 9 times out of 10, man, they're just dudes that happen to be white. You know what I mean? They're not with, you know, they might not be racist. You know what I'm saying? Man, there's a lot of good white dudes out there that don't play that stuff. You know what I mean? Then you got the ones that are extremely. They're all going to move as a unit pretty much, unless there's a real dissension within the white groups that are on the yard at that time. So automatically you're going to have problems with the whole group that chooses to participate. But man, our problem has never been with, you know, like white people or black people or any kind of racial stuff, man. It's certain segments of that group, you know. So what I'm saying is there's not animosity toward any white people by Northerners. There's just not, unless they're AB or AB affiliated.
With that said, this is going to be the first part talking about the enemy or basically hostilities that's been between Norteños and whites.
Yeah, we're gonna bring you guys some more factual stuff, like, you know, deeper into the history, you know, some names, some events that took place and stuff and this and that. But, you know, we have so much to talk about on this subject, man. We got to break it down into, you know, separate little segments.
With that, please hit the like and subscribe button.